Hi everyone. My name is Joshua Dávila. I am doing this presentation on how to fund your commons. I think, considering the name of the conference is Funding the Commons, I think one of the kind of pertinent things we should be talking about is how to do it so that we can do make reality, I think, a lot of the ideas and concepts that were spoken about previously by Michelle Bowens, who I was very inspired by on a lot of my thinking around this. So how to fund your commons, solidarity primitives are at the core of building for the on-chain commons. So a little bit about me. I'm going to be talking about the project I co-founded called Breadchain Cooperative. But you may know me on the internet with that avatar. I have a blog and a podcast called The Blockchain Socialist. I have 2 interviews with Michelle Bowens. You can listen to him talk more if you want. I started that about 5+ years ago. And kind of in the process of making an online community around these very, very niche ideas of kind of progressive politics and crypto together, a bunch of people came up to me and said we should actually do something about it and not just talk about it. And so Breadchain Cooperative is kind of like our attempt at trying to answer that question. Whoop. I think you're going a bit ahead. Just to say that. And I also have copies of my book, Blockchain Radicals, that I wanted to show. So last night, I finished this presentation at 4:30 in the morning. At around midnight, I got this email from PayPal that kind of reinvigorated my desire to keep working in crypto after all this time. Apparently, they charge you €8 if you don't use your PayPal account for a year. But I think part of this is kind of a bit of it was a little bit of the cherry on top to, I think, the collective feeling that maybe many of us are feeling at the moment that we don't necessarily want to talk about, that I think is very easily kind of summarized in this meme that my idols are dead and my enemies are in power. So I think this is kind of a bit of a feeling that is permeating throughout the current political situation that we're in now. And I think what Michelle Bowens was saying earlier is kind of right on the money, that oftentimes what is leading us to our attraction to crypto is that an acknowledgement that institutions are failing us. And so neoliberal institutions are failing us, our heroes are dead, they're not coming to save us, and we need to save ourselves. And I think we can see this in the background. If you look at productivity versus hourly wage, is a very nice manifestation of that ossification of neoliberal institutions. However, we stand on the shoulders of giants, so this is not the first time in human history that it's looked a little bit bleak. We've done this before, and history is on our side. We can always acknowledge and grow the commons that always exist between us, and like our ancestors did in the past, let's bring forth the institutions for what I would term post-capitalism. And so I wanted to say that I imagine a post-capitalist world with all of you. So what I'm trying to do is nerd snipe you a bit and do a little bit of world building to kind of take you along this journey with me and a bunch of others so that we can collectively co-create this story and this future that I think a lot of us would agree with. And so quickly, in case you haven't heard this term before, what is post-capitalism? And so I would define post-capitalism in a couple different ways. It is basically the political economy that is meant to come after capitalism, so it's this admission that history has not ended, it will progress, and something is going to come afterwards, right? If we look at this from a positive angle, what does this likely mean? I think it's a couple of things. One is a reduced reliance on capital as a relationship for how we allocate our resources. And so essentially what that means is more and more collective ownership as something that we should strive for. Multi-dimensional measurements of value, so maybe something like a plurality of different types of money systems. And decentralized coordination for the common good of humanity. So putting the social back into the center rather than just financial capital and the accumulation of capital. So trying to create new feedback loops that are not about accumulation of capital and extraction from the commons, And so these past several decades of neoliberal institutions, we are sort of at the end side of these institutions having power. And so what this ultimately means is regenerating the commons from the destruction that has been wrought by these institutions that have deregulated financial markets at the expense of our social cohesion. And so when we're talking about the commons, of course, just a quick refresher, I'm sure a lot of people know about this, the 8 principles of Ostrom on the commons, clearly defined boundaries around it, graduated sanctions governing its use according to local needs and conditions, allowing people to participate in the writing of those rules, making those who monitor the rules accountable, low cost of conflict resolution, the right to self-organize within them, and nested boundaries within the whole. And so these are kind of like some of the principles that we should keep in mind when we're thinking about funding the commons from the ashes of the death of neoliberal institutions, I hope. And so, for better or for worse, Chobani, the yogurt company, made a really nice commercial that visualized the commons really well. Somehow, a capitalist organization was able to visualize it better than any of we were for a long time. But I kind of wanted to just, give this visual of what is the world that we are wanting to build if we want to stay true to the principles of the commons. It is diversity in types of people and thoughts coming together and providing for one another in a way that isn't, about extraction from one another. And so I highly recommend taking a look at this commercial. There are definitely some problematic things about it, but I won't go about it. It's really nice as a visual and aesthetically. So in case you needed something to help you think about the commons. Oh, is that me? It's different than my computer. And so some of the existing institutions for building commons, right? So our ancestors have done it before. This is not new. The commons was something that existed and was normalized in people's lives. And many of these institutions have evolved into basically what we are existing through today. And these are things that they can look like things like cooperatives, including worker cooperatives, consumer cooperatives, housing cooperatives. I really like the example of the Mietshäuser Syndikat, which owns some 200 properties throughout Germany, in which they all hold as a housing cooperative. Credit unions, community currencies, the solidarity economy, and civil society broadly. So types of groups and organizations that don't have the logic of maximization of profits at the core of their existence. And basically what I think a lot of these types of social organizations do is that, or what they're aiming to do is basically decommodify parts of life through collective ownership and governance. So I think one interesting way to think about capital is in itself a form of governance. It is the choice to be governed by the markets and to be like a leaf that is bounced back and forth in a tornado by the market, and therefore choosing to not have any real proper say in how resources are used except through the use of capital. And so if you don't have capital, you don't have power. And what that means in a world where capital accumulation is at the core, that means very few people actually are able to accumulate that capital and able to exert that power, and that has been at the core of what these neoliberal institutions have put upon us. And so we have these kind of islands of commons and of kind of alternative institutions that we can draw from, that we can then use to use the technology that we're all nerding out about in cryptocurrency and blockchain to scale it at the same level that these other institutions that are already translocal or transglobal. And so the kind of software that we've developed at Breadchain Cooperative, or the concept that we've used to describe this software, is what we call solidarity primitives. So in crypto, often it's the case that people build primitives for finance, right? They build primitives, blocks of software that you can combine together like Lego blocks in order to create a system for speculation, a system for trading your tokens, in a kind of like PvP match in which you're trying to extract out of the market before anyone else is able to. Instead, what we want to be doing is be creating software that is facilitating relationships of solidarity rather than relationships of capital. And that's what we're trying to build. And this is how we're doing, how we're funding our commons. There's also a really nice paper by Other Internet that expanded on our concept of solidarity primitives, on improving labor conditions in Web3. But so Breadchain Cooperative, what is it? It is a network of post-capitalist projects that are somewhat involved in crypto, many of them. We share labor power, resources, decision-making, and mentorship. And we are providing alternative structures of funding in order to make that a reality. So we don't take venture capital, because venture capital is kind of antithetical to the commons. And we are looking to create alternative forms of funding in order to make this happen. And so kind of core objectives of what we do is, apes together strong. We scale solidarity through the technology that we have available to us. As an alternative to competition, we sustain these projects that we believe would build those institutions that will replace the ones that are ossifying today, and help them endure through the market dynamics that we're still living through, and build this coalition for advancing each other, so creating a network effect of these projects that align with one another. And so right now we have four different projects that are inside the network that are external to the core team. And the way that it works is we have a community currency called Bread, which is based on XDAI, which is a dollar stablecoin. So one bread is $1. And the way you create Bread is by giving XDAI, which is the native cryptocurrency of Gnosis chain. You give it to the smart contract. Whatever amount of XDAI you put in is the amount of bread that you get out. And in the back end, so this is our application. It's already live. We have about 320,000 bread in TVL. And that XDAI, when you give it, is being converted into SDAI, or the DAI savings rate, which is earning yield from profits made from MakerDAO. And that is being generated in the back end. And it's being generated, just so you believe me, that there is a source of the yield. It's from liquidation of collateral in MakerDAO. You're able to then fund all of the projects that are part of the network, and you're able to vote on how the yield gets distributed. And we do the distribution a half and half even split, and half and half the other half by voting. So by holding Bread, you accumulate voting power, and then you can distribute how you want to vote on our application directly. And so in this way, we're able to kind of like embed solidarity while also providing a democratic kind of like, you can call it meritocracy or whatever you want, kind of say from people, and we can kind of blend those things together into what is computed in the end, which is the distribution that each project gets. And so the kind of secret, or not secret, but the key to how we're planning to scale is we're planning to take advantage and kind of glob on to the already being created and existing open financial products that are out there already, in which we can make Bread, our cryptocurrency that is funding our commons, that is funding post-capitalist projects, as something that is actually spendable for your everyday purchase. And so basically what we're doing is we're creating a stable coin that is forming a membrane around, so clearly defined boundaries like in a commons, a membrane around a group of people who are highly aligned, so a highly aligned community in which we are funding ourselves and able to passively kind of allow for capital from the traditional world be pulled into our commons so that we can build it in preparation for what's to come. And so this is kind of just the start of what I just explained as the larger vision. Right now we have the fundamental primitives in place. We're kind of next in this stage of being able to grow, so build and grow the movement, evolve into Charmeleon, accumulate a treasury in which we're able to start to collectively own real-world assets and take over the world. So this is using the kind of Cosmo technology, so the global aspects of cryptocurrency, so that we can begin to fund and own together the more local aspects of everyday life. and pull it out of the market. And so we've been doing this now for a little bit. We went live beginning of this year. We've done about 5 different monthly cycles. We had a launch event in Berlin. And yeah, I'm really excited about kind of the things that we've been building. And I think what we've been able to achieve so far with the kind of limited amount of resources. We don't have access to venture capital. We don't have access to the millions of dollars that's, that normal VC startups get. So I'm quite proud of what we've been able to do. And the reason we're able to do it is because we've been staying true to our principles and therefore attracting kind of people who are very motivated and who are like wanting to make this a reality. And that's kind of the game that I'm playing here is I'm saying, I can't offer you I can't offer you that you're going to become really rich in the world that exists today, but I can nerd snipe you a little bit into wanting to join us to build the next institutions of tomorrow. And so what we're doing right now is we are starting a new campaign that we call Angel Minters. Basically, we are asking for those who, either individuals who have the capacity to do so, or those a part of organizations that have treasuries that are able to do so, to mint a minimum of 10,000 bread, so a manageable amount of money for an organization that has a treasury, by the end of 2024 to help bootstrap the project. So the way that, since the funding is based on the TVL of bread, we need more bread to be created. Right? We need people to create the token, to hold it, to create useful things out of it. And so if you check out this QR code, we have a whole page in which we're describing the program, in which you can check it out, and you can become part of this first cohort. If you are interested in it or think an organization that you're a part of is interested in it, then definitely come talk to me and let me know. We can talk about any specifics or things that you would like to have anything specific to your situation. And so yeah, I want to reiterate, I imagine a post-capitalist world with you. So this is an invite for all of you to kind of join and help us co-create what post-capitalism actually looks like. I've described a couple of broad principles of what that means, but of course the specifics are going to be localized. And that is something that we will do together in solidarity with one another so that we can build something that we are all happy with rather than the few at the top. So yeah, that's our app page, app.breadchain.xyz. And yeah, we have some goodies over there, some t-shirts I think we have left, and a bunch of other stuff on the table down there. But yeah, thank you. And then I have books as well if you want to learn more about that.